Hello, you're listening to Count Richard von Coudenhove Kalergi. Today is Friday, the 15th of March, and here's a couple of comments since my last video. Paris, the pregnant wife of a notorious French Islamist, was shot dead by prison guards this week after she and her husband stabbed two prison guards with a ceramic knife smuggled into prison. She arrived at the prison fully veiled, went through a metal detector. The guards don't have the authority to do a full body search without the permission of the visitor. After meeting her husband in the family life unit, she was able to stab one guard in the arm, chest and back, and a second in the arm and face. They barricaded themselves into a room. They were raided by armed security forces, shooting and killing the woman and injuring the man. The man was in prison for the murder of a French World War II hero, aged 89, who had survived the Nazi Dachau concentration camp and was murdered in 2012. He was sentenced to 28 years in prison. Also in Paris, the Basilica of Saint-Denis, completed in 1144 AD, was heavily vandalised, with stained glass windows smashed and a 200-year-old organ severely damaged. The stained glass windows, which were rebuilt after damage during the French Revolution. This area of Paris has up to 300,000 illegal migrants living there, and the Basilica has also, ironically, the remains of Charles Martel, known as the Hammer, who repelled a Muslim invasion of France in 732 AD, unlike the Iberian Peninsula, which was captured in just 7 years and remained occupied for over 700 years before finally being pushed out in 1492. This follows a current wave of vandalism across France that saw in late February 9 Christian churches desecrated in 11 days, with some churches having statues, crosses damaged, tabernacles turned over, and in some instances vandals smearing feces on the walls of the church. I am reminded of a day of rage that took place in Egypt in August 2013 that saw as many as 70 Coptic Christian churches by mobs armed with petrol bombs and stones, who were supporters of the deposed Muslim Brotherhood president Mohammed Morsi. These attacks are believed to be an orchestrated attempt to uproot the Coptic Christians, who make up 10% of Egypt's 84 million population and have existed in Egypt since the setting up in Alexandria in AD 43 by St. Mark. It is also around the time that Ibrahim Halawi was arrested and jailed. His father is head imam of Klansky Mosque and is head of the Muslim Brotherhood in Europe, with strong ties to the head of the Muslim Brotherhood leader, the 92-year-old Al-Qadari. In Germany, a damning report issued by the Federal Office of Migration and Refugees claims 2014 to 2019 that the German government had let in over 5,000 migrants that were subject to criminal investigations and violations of international law. They believe they had been involved in war crimes or crimes against humanity. Several reports have claimed that groups like ISIS have purposely used the crisis to smuggle in their fighters. FDP politician Linda Thunberg said, quote, "War criminals must not get protection in Germany. I have doubts as to whether the federal government has dealt with this in the necessary seriousness." Sweden, that canary in the coal mine, has noticed a similar pattern, with the Swedish Migration Board in 2014 reporting 12 asylum seekers to the Police Commission for war crimes, 21 during 2015, 41 during 2016 and 79 during 2017. Sweden convicted 4 asylum seekers for war crimes in 2017, with one 48-year-old Syrian man being found guilty of killing 7 people in Syria. Back in Germany, in the city of Worms, 40 miles southwest of Frankfurt, with a population of 85,000, at the funeral of a 21-year-old girl, only known as Cynthia Orr, on Monday, a man entered the church with spread out arms, shouting Allah Akbar, causing mourners to flee the church and call the police. The 29-year-old man was arrested and detained by police, who said that the motive was unclear. Before the church service, a march was held in her memory, with over 500 people attending, who placed hundreds of candles at her parents' house. The previous Wednesday, March the 6th, Cynthia was stabbed 10 to 15 times by her 22-year-old boyfriend, a rejected asylum seeker, the main suspect, and who was arrested and remains in custody. She passed away, unfortunately, following her injuries to her hand, back, neck and lungs. Alternative for Germany had organised a silent vigil in her honour, even though the Social Democrat mayor had asked them not to do so. A counter-demonstration organised by the left-wing Alliance Against Nazi Marches. It has now become commonplace for the left to protest marches by the victims of refugee and migrant crime. Can you imagine what would happen if the Middle East, if someone ran into a mosque and said, "Jesus saves"? In Helsinki, Finland, police are looking for a 34-year-old Iraqi wanted for stabbing his ex-wife and 3 children, which has been described as an honour-related attack. The attempted murder took in a child protection facility where the asylum seeker, who arrived with his then wife and 3 children from Iraq in 2015, had attempted to see his ex-wife, who had a restraining order against him after he had previously threatened to murder her for failing to wear a hijab. Police have carried out several home searches to find the man, but have not caught him yet. The man's brother has been arrested on suspicion of involvement in the attempted murder. Also in Finland, a 43-year-old Iraqi asylum seeker has been charged with the murder and violating the dead. A friend of his in the city of Kotia, located on the coast of Finland with a population of 53,000. The murder took place on August 26, 2018, after an argument. Police were called to the apartment but left the apartment soon afterwards, the 43-year-old refusing to open the door. According to the prosecutor, he bought the following day an electric knife and a saw and proceeded to cut up the body and place it in 45 black sacks. He had also added detergent and spices to the black sacks and buried the sacks in the nearby woods. Neighbours who heard the sawing and the electric knife had assumed that some renovations were taking place in the apartment. Jesus, some neighbours. He was arrested some 2 months afterwards on October the 23rd. Now for some domestic issues. In the wake of the Irish concubine Lisa Smith's story, a woman who Bertie Hearn described as a nice woman, Joe Duffy interviewed her friend Carol Duffy about how none of this was anything to do with Islam and that ISIS has nothing to do with Islam. Well, Carol, since 2001 to 2018, 75% of all terrorist attacks have taken place in half of the world's 50 most populous majority Muslim populations, with Muslims killing Muslims. So something must not be right somewhere. And with the Irish government saying that her and her child must come back to Ireland, if the alleged crime took place in Syria, why should she not be charged in Syria? Joe Duffy ended the segment by thanking the commentators and then saying, rather extraordinarily, "Praise be Allah." How about that? Later on that night, I attended the launch of the movement Anti-Corruption Ireland with Gemma O'Doherty in the Pilo Hotel in Ashburn, and met up with a few friendly faces, Free Aidan Fletcher, and met a few new ones. The meeting was a great success, with a packed out room and with some people left standing at the back of the hall. During the question and answer session, I mentioned what I felt was a creeping acceptance of Sharia in Ireland, including the issue of halal slaughtered food being eaten by an unsuspecting public in hospitals, canteens, takeaways and cafes. I also brought up Joe Duffy saying "Praise be Allah," much to the shock, surprise and anger of some of the audience. I got a round of applause for my comment. There were some excellent comments made by other attendees, including a man from Cavan who was a brilliant speaker. Afterwards there was a group photograph taken, and I got a moment to introduce myself to Gemma afterwards and told her that I commented on her streams using the name Count Richard von Coudenhove Kalergi. She replied that she recognised the name in the chat. On Friday morning, information regarding the attack on 2 mosques in Christchurch began to emerge, with 48 being killed and over 40 seriously injured, with 4 people being arrested, with an Australian being identified who filmed it on a live stream which lasted about 17 minutes. RTE Radio News had reports from different people condemning the attack, with the head of Blanchardstown Mosque saying attendees at Friday prayers were worried about the lack of security and were frightened to attend. Joe Duffy then re-interviewed Carol Duffy about being harassed during the week since last Friday and said that she had found rashers in her front garden and that she had only gone out once out of fear. Joe Duffy ended the piece thanking the commentators and saying again, praise be Allah. What's he going to say next week? Allah Akbar. People would do well to remember in this instant that the Muslims are the innocent victims, but usually they are actually the perpetrators. Well, I noticed of 1 or 2 new subscribers this week. Thanks very much for subscribing. Please comment below, and my thoughts are my own. Thanks for listening. Good night and good luck.